It being 11 a.m, I declare open this public hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Trade, Investment, Growth for its inquiry into creating sustainable economic growth in rural and regional Australia. Today, the committee is meeting in Mount Gambier, South Australia. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we meet today and pay my respects to their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their cultural and spiritual connections to Australia's land and waters. In accordance with the Committee's resolution of the 27th of August 2025, this hearing will be audio broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of proceeding will be published on the inquiry website. I remind members of the media who may be listening or here in person to the need to fairly and accurately report the proceedings of the committee. I'll start today by introducing myself. I'm the Deputy Chair, Mr Rick Wilson. I'm the member for O'Connor, and I apologise on behalf of the Chair, who had an unfortunate accident which has resulted in a broken toe and so is unable to attend. I'm the member for O'Connor in southeast Western Australia, 1.1 million square kilometres and a very large regional and rural seat. And I will start at the to my left, Jo.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name's Jo Brisky. I'm the federal member for Maribyrnong, which is in Metro Melbourne.
Senator Dorinda Cox, and I'm the Senator for Western Australia.
Thanks, Georgianas, fellow South Australian and the federal member for Adelaide, which is the CBD and about 10 kilometres circumference around the CBD.
I now call on representatives from the Limestone Coast Local Government Association to give evidence. For the Hansard record, will you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Okay, Mayor Lynette Martin, Mayor of the City of Mount Gambier.
Mayor Liz Goosens, and I'm the Mayor of the Tatiara District Council and Vice President of the LCLGA.
Charlotte Edmonds, I'm the Executive Officer of the LCLGA.
Kylie Boston, I'm the Mayor of the District Council of Grant and also a board member of the Limestone Coast Local Government Association.
Patrick Ross, Mayor, Naracoorte-Lucindale Council and board member of the LCLGA.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standings of proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. To assist with the transcription of the public hearing, it would be appreciated if you could please state your name before responding to each question. I now invite the witnesses to make a brief opening statement and then we'll proceed to questions. So perhaps Mayor Martin.
Sorry, I will do that opening statement as President of the Limestone Coast Local Government Association. So good morning and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the Limestone Coast Local Government Association. The association represents 6 member councils: the City of Mount Gambier, the District Council of Grant, Kingston District Council, Naracoorte-Lucindale Council, the District Council of Robe and Tatiara District Council, reflecting more than 140 years of regional cooperation in local government across the Limestone Coast. The traditional owners have already been acknowledged and I just pay my respects to them also. This inquiry goes to the heart of what regions like the Limestone Coast are trying to achieve. We are not seeking growth at any cost. We are seeking sustainable economic growth that builds on our strengths, creates value locally and positions our region strongly in domestic and international markets. The Limestone Coast is one of South Australia's most productive and diverse regional economies, centred around agriculture, forestry and fishing. On just 2% of the state's land mass, these sectors generate more than $3.3 billion in annual output and produce roughly 1/3 of South Australia's agricultural output. Importantly, the Limestone Coast does not just produce, it also value adds, contributing strongly to the state's processed food, wine, timber and fibre industries. That economic strength is deeply connected to place Our region is home to internationally significant environmental and geological assets, including the UNESCO World Heritage listed Naracoorte Caves, volcanic landscapes, wetlands, coastal environments, and highly valued groundwater systems. These assets underpin not only our way of life, but also our visitor economy, our export reputation, and our long-term prosperity. Tourism is an important part of this story. The Limestone Coast generates over $600 million in visitor expenditure each year. But the real opportunity lies in using tourism more deliberately to support the value of our food, wine, seafood, and other premium products. When visitors experience produce in the place it is grown, made, or harvested, they build trust in its quality, provenance, and authenticity. In that sense, agritourism is export-aligned tourism. It diversifies income, strengthens resilience, and creates a direct link between visitor experience and export reputation. This is why stronger domestic and international marketing of Australia's clean and green agriculture, food and drink sectors matters so much. In the Limestone Coast, that reputation is credible because it is grounded in place, in our landscapes, groundwater, environmental assets, and the quality of what we produce. Better branding, labelling and market positioning can help regional producers, tourism operators and small businesses capture more value rather than remaining exposed to volatile commodity markets. Many small and medium primary production businesses in the Limestone Coast produce outstanding goods and experiences, but do not always have the scale, reach or support needed to turn that quality into stronger returns. Better branding, labelling and certification can help close that gap by enabling producers, manufacturers, tourism operators and hospitality businesses to signal provenance, stand out in the market and build consumer confidence at home and overseas. At the same time, we need to be mindful of land uses that may conflict with that clean and green regional identity. In the Limestone Coast, reputation is not an abstract concept. It underpins agriculture, tourism, exports and investment attraction. If that reputation is diluted or associated with environmental risk, the consequences may be felt across multiple sectors of the regional economy. Future development decisions must therefore weigh immediate economic benefits against the long-term value of the reputation on which so much regional prosperity depends. Finally, recognising the role of local government in shaping and sustaining regional economies is paramount. Councils own and operate essential regional assets such as airports, sale yards, tourism information centres, jetties and first-mile road infrastructure. Increasingly, we are also playing a role in enabling housing development, supporting childcare provision and responding to climate change. We sit at the interface between industry and community. Stronger regions are key to smarter national growth, and local government must be recognised and resourced appropriately as part of the equation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to add to that opening statement?
If I may. Patrick Ross, Mayor of Naracoorte Lucendale Council. I'd just like to have a brief discussion on the livestock industry here in the Limestone Coast. If environmental stewardship is the cornerstone of our region's identity, it follows that those who nurture it are the heroes, the farmers, the fallers, the millers, the fishers and the viticulturalists, to name a few, are those who oversee that environment and have done so since the first man walked this landscape. The livestock industry has been the hallmark of the Limestone Coast region since first settlement and remains to this day the main driver of economic output. And this morning I drove from 20 kilometres north of Lucendale down through the very heart of the Limestone Coast to arrive in Mount Gambier. I didn't see one crop. All I saw were ewes lambing and cattle with their calves. It is an absolute driver of this economy. The Limestone Coast is blessed with very good soil, just the right climate and a groundwater asset which is sustainably managed. Given these parameters and the great desire to utilise the best genetics available, this region produces over 30% of all beef and sheep meat in South Australia. And further to that, we have the highest density of cattle anywhere in the nation here in the Limestone Coast, and we're second only in sheep density to Glenelg Hopkins, which is just adjacent over the imaginary border. So, you know, it is an absolute driver. The industry here in South Australia in 24/5 had a value of $2.7 billion, a production value of nearly $2 billion, a processing value of nearly $2 billion and exports of 1.6. Interestingly enough, over the last 4 years, beef processing, or the tonnes, has increased from 45,000 tonnes to 106,000 tonnes. Sheep meat process has gone from 68,000 tonnes to 85,000 tonnes over the same period. The Naracoorte-Lucindale Livestock Exchange, which is owned by the council, has a throughput of 500,000 sheep and lambs a year and 85,000 head of cattle, and is South Australia's premier livestock exchange, and it is adjacent to the Tees Cargill processing plant here in the southeast, which has been owned by many people, many different companies over the period, and on a yearly basis it puts through between 150 and 200,000 head of cattle. And just to my north at Bordertown we have JBS, a privately owned company that puts through between 1.5 and 2 million sheep and lamb a year. Really important. This just demonstrates the importance of the livestock industry to this region. This is all done with rain and grass as nature has provided, but there are massive risks. The regulatory framework maintaining strong biosecurity structure is failing livestock. Let us consider varroa mite. Bees are livestock. This year, the pollination for food crops in Australia will be short 300,000 beehives. Crop yields will fall and the value of exports from here will decline. That's across Australia. So varroa mite, and that is all around biosecurity, what's coming into our country. And furthermore, since the first incursion of varroa mite, we've had a second incursion of varroa mite, and only this morning I hear that the control measures they're using to control varroa mite are now failing in the Riverland. So we have some very real issues around bees as livestock. Poor control at our borders. So, for example, if FMD or lumpy skin were to enter Australia, the results would be dramatic, to say the least. And so, here in the Limestone Coast, the threat to this food and fibre mainstay is at risk due to regulatory framework, where high water-using activities, for example mining and unconventional gas extraction, may well put water at unreasonable risk of depletion or serious contamination. The Limestone Coast punches well above its weight, and it can do more when it comes to delivering prime red meat protein to the nation and the world at large. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'll just kick things off with a couple of questions just to get a bit of context around tourism and visitation, and I'll direct it to Charlotte because I assume that you've put together the submission. The region currently attracts 1.463 million visitors, which is a very impressive number. 54% of these overnight, 45% of these day trips. How does that, like, it's a long way from Adelaide, it's a long way for a day trip, it's a long way from Melbourne for a day trip. I mean, I would have thought that particularly Mount Gambier would have been an overnight stay, or at least part of a kind of extended trip. Is that a fair observation, or these numbers kind of don't seem to back that up?
Charlotte Edmonds, Executive Officer, LCWJ. So the majority of our visitors come across the border from Victoria. So I suppose if they're in regional Western Victoria, that would be a day trip. We also, that's 55% come from across the border from Victoria. And yeah, we have overnight visitors of 2.3 million, and they stay roughly 2.3 nights on average, but the day trippers, they're coming from other regions in South Australia across the border from Victoria.
And I mean, most of us live in a sort of a pre-COVID, post-COVID world where things change dramatically. Domestic visitation obviously increased during COVID when people couldn't go overseas. Is that sort of been maintained, or are people going back overseas now? What's happening in this particular region?
The domestic visitation in Limestone Coast is growing. It's been growing for about the last 5 years on a pretty steady trajectory. The international visitation is less than 4%. Pre-COVID, it was about 7%. So that's probably our target market for growth, because we haven't quite reached those pre-COVID levels yet. So while we love the domestic visitation and that's our key income stream, the international market is really where I think we could harness some opportunities.
And I know we've got wine producers, dairy farmers, and others that are appearing a bit later on. But is the main value add to those types of businesses the cellar door sale or the farm shop sale, or is it building the brand recognition so that in Adelaide and Melbourne and Sydney people are seeing their product on the shelf and buying it in those bigger population centres, or is it sort of just the cellar door sales here in the region?
I'll let wine, I know you're speaking to wine later, so I won't go too much into that, but I think the Coonawarra wine region obviously has that reputation and that brand and that name. The other wine regions in the Limestone Coast, not so much. But I think other than the Coonawarra, I think there's massive opportunity to leverage a brand and a name, but I don't think it's being done to the extent that it could be.
Okay. Steve, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for your wonderful contribution to our state through some great economic activity, some incredible figures that most South Australians wouldn't be aware of about the amount of beef and sheep, lamb, etc. that are being exported, etc. from this part of the world, and it's no doubt a big benefit to our state. But I'm just going to kick off with a couple of questions in terms of workforce. Are there any issues with workforce in terms of shortages, not being able to get the right skills, filling positions? What bit of a take on that, and whereabouts, where do you stand in that area? Travelling around the country and speaking to many people, the regional areas are really are struggling to get workforce, we're hearing, and I just want to see if it's the same down here at the southeast, which no doubt.
I'd be pleased to answer that. Liz Goosens, Vice President of the Limestone Coast LGA. So I am Mayor of the Tetiara District Council, and our main town is Border Town, and certainly housing is a huge issue to us, probably has been for 15 years, and Council have really tackled that head on. Because we simply do not have any houses, and it's a market failure. We've actually had to address it because simply no private investors will come in to develop the land or to build the houses. We have no accommodation and we virtually have no unemployment. We do have to bring, for JBS, who's one of our biggest employers, do get a lot of migrants, Pacific Islanders. We've very much become, I've lived there most of my life, would have known everybody that walked down the street, and now we're very much a multicultural community, and our community has embraced that because we simply have to have migrants come. And I'm proud of the fact that we do that well. We've actually employed people within our council to actually handle that. But certainly housing is a big issue. We did worked with the federal government with Building Better Regions, where we did get funding for that, where we did build 8 workers' accommodation at the Border Town Caravan Park, which our council took over because we just needed to try and address it, and that is at 98% occupancy. So there's 8 houses that would have been needed, yet are now least being coped with workers' accommodation. And really, I think we do struggle here in the fact that we just, any funding that does become available is very hard for us. $1 million to us to help with us in housing is a huge boost, yet we're up competitive against the rest of Australia to try and be competitive in trying to get any of that funding, because Council, we are doing the development of Ramsay Terrace, which is 55 blocks, which really isn't a lot to some of the big, but it's a huge, huge difference to us. And trying to get help for funding for the infrastructure of that. We're not going to build the houses, we're just trying to develop blocks. And there's a big need. And our economy is thriving, as Councillor like Patrick said, that, you know, we've got the work, we are producing, but we just need workers and accommodation. And we're in a competitive field, and it's very challenging for all of our councils to do that. So, and then to flow on from that is the work, is water supply. We have major problems with the amount of water supply, and childcare has certainly been a big challenge. We're lucky enough to have childcare is going to be built, $11.8 million childcare is going to be built in Bordertown, and that is a combination of both state and federal money going into that, which is a huge, but it's probably only meeting the needs of now. We're very grateful, don't get me wrong, but it's probably, we're soon going to outgrow that probably as well. But that's still 3 years away. But certainly we welcome the opportunity for that to be built. That's going to help, yeah.
Where would the, in terms of workforce shortages, what are the most significant areas which areas are struggling more than others? Is there any particular area that's really struggling to attract a workforce?
In our case, it would be JBS, the food processing would be, and Blue Lake Milling, which is an oak milling company. But I've seen it over the last few years where even just farmers, rural people, that farmers have been getting bigger, their landowners are bigger, and they just need to get people to help on labour just on the farm, and that they're just not there. We just don't have them, because anybody that wants a job, there's certainly plenty of opportunity. And I know what actually happens is you're nearly poaching from one trade to another. You know, we had perhaps 8 diesel mechanics where people can just name their price on what they're wanting to be paid, because we can't attract them because we haven't actually got a house for them.
So if there was better housing infrastructure, etc., it'd be easier.
We would certainly attract them.
And childcare and all those things.
It's just that spiral. And I'm sure all towns are the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just going to say, Lynette Martin, President of the LCLGA and Mayor of the City of Mount Gambier. So in Mount Gambier, it is our ability to attract and retain skilled and key workers, particularly in health and allied health. To service the hospital here, we do have a relatively large cohort of, fly in, fly out specialists. So that has been a challenge for some years. And just talking to business owners across the board, everyone is saying it's just difficult to get employees to work. I mean, we don't know where they've all disappeared. It seems to have happened since COVID. But across the board, generally, there seems to be challenges in just getting anyone to work, be it retail or wherever. But certainly in health, it's...
Thank you. And I know Mr. Ross would like to jump in, but we are running a bit short of time. So Senator Cox, if you have a question.
Yes. So in your submission, and thank you for providing the submission to this inquiry, one of the things we're really keen to understand is from an agritourism point of view, and I think it might have been Mr. Ross that mentioned some of the challenges or barriers to ensuring that agritourism is able to be bolstered or supported, particularly in regional and rural areas. So I'm keen to unpack that a little bit more. You also mentioned what are the some of the opportunities that you've identified here in the Limestone Coast. So just if you can provide some of the suggestions around those. So I've noted housing, childcare, and water supply. But are there any others that that you can identify for us?
Yeah, so the opportunities for agritourism specifically. The LCLGA, I'll also mention, is currently the Regional Tourism Organisation, and we partnered with Regional Development Australia Limestone Coast to host an agritourism workshop a couple of weeks ago that was held in the Coonawarra, and that was booked out. So I think that shows the demand. We allowed for 30 places, and that was a booked out session, it was a full day workshop, and it was really inviting those businesses, particularly agribusinesses, that were interested in getting into agritourism. So I think that's an indication of the interest. And we know that there's demand. Tourism Australia will tell you that agritourism is one of the main drivers for tourism in Australia at the moment, and it's growing. So for the Limestone Coast in particular, because of the food that we produce here, and specifically the diversity of what we produce here, I think that's what sets us apart to a lot of other regions in Australia, is the fact that we have the seafood, the wine, the livestock, grain, we have everything. So I think that gives us probably plenty of opportunity to, and we also see agritourism as an opportunity to diversify our economy, because we're so reliant on agriculture here, which is fantastic. But in times of drought or downturns in commodities, etc., agritourism really offers that opportunity for economic diversification that doesn't impact agriculture in a negative way like some other industries would. They really go hand in hand. So that's where the Limestone Coast Local Government Association sees a lot of opportunity, and the fact that we had a booked out workshop a couple of weeks ago shows that there's interest in the agricultural community from...
Yeah. Thank you, Ms Edmonds. I'm keen to understand, what does that look like? Is that marketing in a practical sense, access to markets more broadly? Sorry, not to lead you, but I'm just want to try and ensure that we have sort of some direction. Obviously, all tiers of government are acknowledging the work of local government. I heard that very loudly, but state and federal government obviously have a role in attracting private investment. Here into the Limestone Coast is obviously important as well. But practically, is it around marketing products? Is it around access to markets? What is it that we could do as the federal government, and more so from this committee's point of view, to sort of recommend that these are the practical things that could help you?
I think it's definitely a marketing and branding opportunity, particularly when you're linking that with international tourism. As I said before, international tourism is a key market of growth for us. So if we were to brand our product to international markets, that could then link in with that tourism marketing, that would definitely be positive. And I might just actually, Kylie, did you want to talk about the lobster? Seafood experience.
So I was also just going to, with my, Kylie Boston, Mayor of the District Council of Grant. I just would like to add to my learned friend in Patrick Ross, because we haven't spoken dairy, and there's over 50% of dairies actually produced out of here, and we've talked a lot that there is opportunity around that as well as part of the experience. The lobster experience is something that we've been looking at and trying to explore out of Port Macdonald, which is the biggest southern lobster capital of the Southern Hemisphere, and a lot of the barriers are to the development of getting to the markets or getting the people here. So we do have a regional airport, as we've alluded to, but there is issues around getting the flights at the right times and things like that, and also keeping carriers carriers or viable carriers flying in. So we see that as an opportunity with this international tourism piece, I guess, of having that and having those experiences there, and are talking quite closely. There's 3 exporters there who are looking at it, but there's barriers around planning issues and things like that are real barriers around some of the red tape, I guess, of getting those private businesses over the mark to be able to make the next step and make that commitment.
Thank you, Senator Cox. I'll come to Ms Brisky in a moment. Sure. Just for the benefit of the committee, has there been any interaction with Tourism Australia in terms of branding the Limestone Coast and promoting it in international markets? I mean, they go to international trade fairs all the time, and they're promoting all parts of Australia. Has there been any particular interaction with them? And
we work quite closely with the South Australian Tourism Commission, so they do the marketing from a statewide level and they promote the Limestone Coast. So that's, we deal through them, and then I think they deal with Tourism Australia. So our main connection is with South Australian Tourism.
Joe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your contributions to the committee this morning. It's been really insightful. I wanted to touch on, we've previously heard as a committee around the role of TradeStart, the advisor network. I just wanted to see, I understand they might have a presence here in Mount Gambier. Just wanted to get your reflections on how this is working in terms of the support it provides for industry here, and whether there's been any benefits that you've seen through that work. Anyone? Haven't? No. Okay. Okay. That is also helpful to. So that's and that might then also sort of triggers me, I think, further to some of the comments you were making in response to Senator Cox's questions around, talking about opportunities, but also the expansion of what are the current barriers to expanding in agritourism. I mean, we've touched on a couple of the infrastructure pieces. Is there anything further you'd like to add around some of the, yes, Mr. Ross?
Always it's regulation.
Sure.
It's always regulation. So people start out with the best intention about inviting people to come to their properties, and then the regulation, it's either not consistent across the nation, which is really important. So we're all on the same playing field. Yep. That would be a great start. So I'm not sure, but I certainly know from where I come that as I move away from local government, I actually quite like the idea of agritourism and taking people around our properties. And I've done that with migrant people, and they're just amazed at the size and the scale and all of those things which we look at every day when we walk or drive around our landscape, that they just, it's incomprehensible to so many people. And so that's the thing that we need to, bring to the wider population. And I know from my travels in Africa and Asia, it's always about regulation, and that we need to make sure that that is reasonable and not overly onerous. It has to be safe. Mm-hmm. I get that, but it doesn't need to be too onerous.
Can I just ask, sorry, to clarify, are you talking about both federal and state regulation, or one or the other, or?
One would assume it'd be generally state regulation. Sure. that would be the the biggest issue within South Australia. Sure. But that's no reason that that there shouldn't be consistency of regulation across the Commonwealth. Yeah. That's, I think, is important.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
All right, well, look, thank you all very much. We're going to have to wrap this up. I just want to give you one last opportunity if there's any particular burning issue that you'd like to get on the record before we close this segment.
If I can just make one final point, that I think I just want to highlight the importance of collaboration. So as you've heard, we have a really diverse economy here in terms of agriculture, but I think there is opportunity in working together. And a few years ago, the federal government had a program that was established clusters to work together, and branding was one of those opportunities. We had one in the Limestone Coast, but the program ceased, so there was no continuing funding, so it it collapsed. It was deregistered in about 2024, sorry. But I think there could be learnings from that, because I think to collaborate across commodities for that branding opportunity is really important.
Could I just also add that, to add to that is really to remember that it's very hard for regionals to bid against Metro, or goes a long way in any funding or any help in any way in regional can go a long way. It's very hard for us to be competitive against Metro or larger areas. So please don't forget, any help I think use very wisely and has a big impact on our regions.
Okay.
If I can I sum that up, which is the importance of the collaboration piece, and I think that's why, as industries across the whole Limestone Coast, we've been very good at all working together, because we've had to get things done. So, and I think that's then why these sorts of things could be very successful, because we are very good at that value adding and sharing those experiences.
Well, thank you very much for your attendance here today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, would you please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of July 2026. Please be aware that any questions on notice will be published on the committee's website. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence, and you'll have the opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you once again, and we'll wrap up this section. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
To push us in.
Yes.
If I can.
Thank you.
Might see you there then.
Okay.
That would be good.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Coming back here. Sorry? Are you coming back? Look, it's like it, yes, August. Just making sure they. Yes, because it'll be the regional.
Okay, can I invite those people who are involved in the round table to come forward, please?
Recognise my name.
Musical chairs here.
I welcome representatives from the Limestone Coast Grape and Wine Council, from Patrick of Coonawarra and Balnaves of Coonawarra to give evidence. Yep. And so for the Hansard record, would you please state your full name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Pete Balnaves, owner of Balnaves of Coonawarra, representing the Coonawarra Vignerons Association.
Helen Strickland, I'm President of the Limestone Coast Grape and Wine Council, representing members' views.
Luke Togashu, owner of Patrick of Coonawarra and representing Patrick of Coonawarra as a small, medium enterprise wine business.
Kate Rayner, Finance Manager of Patrick of Coonawarra, representing the small, medium businesses for Coonawarra region.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing of proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. To assist with the transcription of public hearings, it would be appreciated if you could please state your name before responding to each question. Before I invite you to make brief opening statements, for those of you who weren't here, my name is Rick Wilson. I'm the Deputy Chair of this committee. I'm the member for O'Connor in South Eastern WA, standing in for our Chair who's indisposed.
Senator Cox from Western Australia.
Joe Brisky, Federal Member for Maribyrnong in Metro Melbourne.
Steve Georgianis, Federal Member for Adelaide, South Australia.
Thank you. I now invite the witnesses to make a brief opening statement and then we'll proceed to questions.
Sure, thank you. Luke Togashu, owner of Patrick of Coonawarra. I'm a second generation owner and winemaker and representing family-owned small and medium enterprise wine producers in the Coonawarra wine region. We appreciate the committee undertaking this inquiry as it provides important opportunity for us to share our lived experience and practical insight as a business owner. It couldn't come at a better time for the wine industry as the current economic conditions, declining visitor numbers and increasing expenses are significantly impacting our vineyards and wine producers and associated tourism businesses in our region. According to the South Australian Tourism Commission, the Limestone Coast visitor economy contributes approximately $662 million annually to the economy and supports about 2,100 jobs. Coonawarra is in the heart of the Limestone Coast and is internationally recognised as one of Australia's premier wine regions. Yet, despite our global reputation, many wine and tourism businesses are facing some increasing economic pressure. Independent data from SpendMat, which tracks credit card and bank transaction spend in the region, has demonstrated concerning decline in visitor expenditure in the Penola and Coonawarra area. Between 2022 and 26, average weekly visitor spending has declined across entertainment, travel, food retailing and alcohol categories. This trend affects business confidence, investment decisions, employment opportunities and long-term sustainability. But our purpose today is not to outline the challenges. Our purpose is to share our regional business experience, highlight some opportunities for sustainable economic growth and reinforce the importance of Australia's wine regions in the tourism and export economies. The outcome of this meeting also gives you the opportunity to make a real difference in our industry and community. I'll hand over to Helen to speak from the Limestone Coast Grape and Wine Council.
Thanks, Luke. So Helen Strickland, as I said before, President of the Limestone Coast Grape and Wine Council, putting forward members' input over the last, I would say, year and a half, as we have been challenged, as Luke has said, in terms of the wine industry. Limestone Coast is one of Australia's premier wine regions. It spans South Australia's southeast from the coast to the Victorian border. It comprises 6 distinct regions: Coonawarra, Padthaway, Rattenbully, Mount Benson, Robe and Mount Gambier, as well as the broader Limestone Coast Wine Zone Other, which includes areas such as Bordertown and Lucindale. Obviously, there's some bigger regions in there and some tiny ones, but we work together for the good of the whole region. Together, these regions form a large, diverse premium wine zone of around 21,000 hectares of vineyards, producing globally recognised cool climate wine. That hectare is a shifting kind of a thing at the moment as people look at whether their enterprise is viable and whether they shift to other enterprises. Some key points that members would like to put forward in terms of protecting Australia's clean and green brand. Australia's premium agricultural reputation is a national economic asset, but currently we believe it is underprotected. We need clear, enforceable national standards for sustainability and provenance. Our export marketing must be credible, consistent and evidence-based. And land use decisions around who farms what on the land must be consistent, must consider the impact on agricultural reputation and exports. And in particular for our region here, I'm thinking of mining, energy use, water. Water is the It is the pivotal issue for our region. We have an underground aquifer. It must be protected. It must be used sustainably, so that not only are we having the benefits of it, so are our children and our grandchildren. So these are big issues for our region in terms of that clean and green status. We need to back regional small and medium enterprises to compete and to export. Regional small businesses produce high-value products but face some structural barriers. Too many are locked out of export markets due to cost, complexity and risk. So for small players, just looking at getting into the export market, one person spoke with me the other week and said, you've got to spend 2 years to get a return. And that means you are spending a lot of money with no comeback for that period of time. Our current support, our members believe, is not working, that we need to reduce export costs and risks, strengthen supply chain protections and expand practical hands-on export support. And I know that these guys are going to talk about that a bit more, so I won't. We need to fix the data gap and get the National Vineyard Register up. We've been working on that since 2024. It's due for implementation, or the start of implementation, in 2027. The point we are making is you cannot manage supply or policy settings without accurate real-time data. Now, South Australia does have that to some extent. It's not available nationally to actually know what's out there, who's growing what, how many hectares, and what's it worth. So a National Vineyard Register is a priority, we believe, to improve market transparency, investment confidence and evidence-based policy decisions. Next point, we need to deliver practical structural adjustment support, which is a nice way of saying that there is a lot of pain out there at the moment. I think in pretty much every region in Australia, and the Limestone Coast is not separate from that. Parts of the industry are facing oversupply, falling profitability. I'd say that's across the board. Without action, we're seeing vineyard removal, business exits and regional decline. So our members believe that we need direct grants for transition and vine removal. It's a complicated thing to get out of a vineyard. You've got some things that need to be handled sensitively in terms of I guess the land itself and not harming that. You've got to get rid of posts and wires and plastics. Vines are probably the easy bit to get rid of, but it's quite an expensive proposition. We need support for land use change and infrastructure adjustment, and it must be planned and supported, not left to a crisis. I guess the next point, I've only got a couple of others, strengthen regional branding and premium positioning. Australia must continue shifting from volume to value. And regional brands like the Limestone Coast are globally recognised, particularly Coonawarra, but I believe under-leveraged. We should promote regional identity and provenance and align labelling and certification to build trust and price premiums. And I guess in line with what we've heard from the last around standing committee input, better integration of tourism with trade and exports. So tourism and agriculture are not connected strongly enough at a national level. Visitors are future customers. We should treat them that way. So key actions include a national food, wine and tourism strategy, investment in regional tourism infrastructure, accommodation, roads, and actually visibility of knowing where things are, and programs to convert visitors into ongoing export demand. The other things are around, I guess, making sure that there is a coordinated national approach to this structural adjustment that we're going through. Investment in biosecurity is completely important where we are, I live 8 k's from the Victorian border. If someone comes in to harvest grapes on my place, they are likely to have been in Victoria. So it's that thing of understanding what diseases are out there, what could come in, and how you fund ongoing understanding of biosecurity. So just to close, regional Australia has a strong global demand for premium products, but without coordinated action, structural barriers will limit growth.
Thank you. Mr Balnaves, did you have...
Balnaves, just to give you a bit of context to the comments that I'm going to make. So Balnaves of Coonawarra is a family-owned wine business located in the Coonawarra wine region. It's been associated with the district since 1855, and we first started producing wines in 1990. The business encompasses vineyard management, wine production, grape sales, bulk wine sales, cellar door tourism, domestic and international wine sales, and viticultural services to other growers throughout the region. Balnaves exports to markets including Papua New Guinea, South Korea and the United Kingdom, and supports permanent and seasonal employment across viticulture, winemaking, tourism, administration, logistics and contracting services. During peak periods, the business employs up to 30 people directly while generating economic activity through its relationships with local suppliers, transport operators, accommodation providers, tourism businesses throughout the Limestone Coast. And to answer a previous question, finding employees is very difficult at all levels across those services. Wine tourism is a key driver for visitation in the Limestone Coast, generating expenditure across accommodation, hospitality and retail businesses, and helping sustain regional jobs and investment like many businesses across the wine sector. Balnaves have been significantly impacted by the current industry downturn, global supply declining, wine consumption, reduced demand for grapes, rising input costs and ongoing market uncertainty have placed considerable pressure on wine businesses, grape growers and regional communities. Despite these challenges, Balnaves have remained committed to sustainable business practices and continuous improvement across environmental, social and government outcomes. My part in this submission is to talk about the sustainability and investment confidence. My background has been in water politics, and this encapsulates many things, both technical and social licence based. To highlight the importance of the clean green image, I've given you a copy of our sustainable document as a business, which is it's our document, but it's not uncommon to see that right across wine, grape and businesses across Australia. The Limestone Coast, Coonawarra and South Australia wine industry, along with many other agricultural businesses, benefit from the clean green image that it's taken generations to generate and millions of dollars to sustain. The broader wine industry does this through Sustainable Wine Growing Australia, which is a trust mark for sustainability, and many other companies do additional work to further their own business objectives. The social licence of the clean green image. As you would be aware, the wine industry is a forward-facing industry. That is, we have customers just over the counter. The customers both within Australia and all parts of the world through export markets are now more than ever asking where are the grapes grown, how are the grapes grown, how are the wines made, and how has the producer undertaken to make these wines sustainably. This has been enabled through the advent of smartphones, social media and the like, and it's changed the way in many other industries in primary production operate. The gatekeepers of influence can change quickly, and for the good and for the bad. Through QR codes and other technologies, the consumer can now see your vineyard and your winery and many other aspects that they feel they need to understand in purchasing your product. This also shows to us the importance of bricks and mortar in visitation to your cellar door is a physical act of contact, and from one that you, in most cases, if you can provide a good experience, you will have engaged the customer for life. It highlights the need to bring customers both domestically and internationally to the region, because generally, as you would have done in your own holidays, you become an advocate for a country town or a business that you've been to. In summary, the clean green image, the social licence behind that has never been more important. Development of industries such as unconventional gas extraction, fracking or strip mining next to or within premium food and wine producing regions has the ability to significantly have significant detrimental effects to the long-term business and investment confidence. This is actually happening now north of Coonawarra, with strip mining for rare earths are happening. Recent discussions of the South Australian Government has about lifting the moratorium of unconventional gas extraction in the region has been heard in United Kingdom export markets. That's not to say that we should never do anything, but it just highlights how the information transfers and the speed at which it's happening. We feel that an integrated approach to both state and federal government through a proposed agricultural commissioner dealing with how and where industries interact and a focus on maintaining and enhancing Australia's clean green image should move to the forefront, because it's a point of difference that Australia has and can continue to be capitalised on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start off with a question to Ms Strickland. You've talked a couple of your points about structural adjustment of the wine producing sector. What percentage of vines would need to be pulled to bring supply and demand back into balance?
That's one of those how long is a piece of string questions, and there are various answers to that. It might be that it's less about what percentage needs to leave and more about what types of grapes and what regions need to look at some adjustments. I think it will be across the board, but I believe that it would be sad to see the premium regions that are doing a little better also pull out a lot of vines. But, you know, there are figures kicked around 30%, but you guys would also have those kinds of figures?
Yeah. Peak Barnos, the reality is that consumption of alcohol worldwide has dropped by 30% over the last few years. So the demand is still there. It's just the demand has changed for the style of wines that are being made and where they're coming from. So there needs to be an adjustment as soon as possible, and it'll adjust to what the market demands fairly quickly, I think.
So where are the opportunities? I guess, you know, as you mentioned, Coonawarra in particular is recognised as a premium wine producing area. Is there potential to expand markets for premium wines? I mean, I know that bulk wines are struggling in places like China and the US, where demand seems to be dropping off, but you know, is it across the board, or is there a separate opportunity for premium wines from this region?
Luke Tokishu, owner of Patrick of Coonawarra. Yes, definitely is a chance for premiumisation of wine especially, and we in Coonawarra certainly have seen that opportunity. Volumes have come back, but value continues to grow, and there's more opportunity for us as a small business owner to chase that high value end product, whether that's selling less wine but more expensive wine. There is a limited market within Australia for that, and so you're obviously playing in a lot more markets to try and tap into that high-end demand, but certainly that is where the opportunity is for us going forward, if we can get through some of the challenges of oversupply in the short term.
And I addressed a question to the previous panel, but was really more appropriate to you guys. With wine tourism, what's the best value for your businesses? Is it, you know, the cellar door sales? Is it building that brand recognition for people when they go back to Sydney or Melbourne and they buy your wine off the shelf? What are you really trying to achieve with your kind of cellar door type activities?
Pete Barnos, I think the cellar door is the most profitable place to sell wine. You've got no distributors, no wholesalers between you and who you're selling to, and that key point of contact in ingratiating people into your premises and dealing with them is a really key part of what we do, because people talk about, and they talk to their friends about coming to a region or going to a cellar door, then potentially going to a restaurant or staying in accommodation. So regional tourism and the ability to try and increase that is a key point. As was spoken about in the last submission, it's a very important thing and probably not difficult to do. It's just how it's best harnessed.
And Helen Strickland, can I just add to that what I see increasingly with our very small cellar door is that people want experiences, and so they're very chuffed if they're talking to the winemaker and if they get to sample something out of a barrel, or if they, we do a walk to our waterhole, which people love, or a walk around the garden. So it is about tasting wines, but it's more than that. It's, do you have a decent platter of food to go with that? And can you talk with me about what's the difference between Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio, and why have they all got the same Pinot and they're all different? And so it is about, as Pete said, it's about developing a relationship rather than just kind of going, there's 3 wines, taste them, which one are you going to buy?
If I may, I'll go to you next, Joe, but with the tourism picture, are you seeing tour groups coming, like a busload of international tourists or Australian tourists? Is it drive-in local people that have, driven up from Melbourne or, down from Adelaide? What is the tourist sort of market that you're dealing with?
Can I start? Yeah. Just Helen Strickland. I think it's different everywhere. So I think that there are some busloads wandering around. There are people who we see that meet in Mount Gambier because it's halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide, and they're coming from different points of view. But I would think it would be different in the Coonawarra as well, and then different at Mount Benson and places like Rattenbully that have very limited cellar door would be different again. But over to you, Patrick.
Luke Tokushu, owner of Patrick of Coonawarra. Our main visitation is domestically, and Melbourne, Victoria, Adelaide are our 2 regions that we get the most visitors from. We don't get a lot of tour groups being so regional where we are, so we're getting more carloads of people coming over for multiple night stays, and increasingly we've seen that they're coming to Coonawarra, but they're also spending a day at Robe at the coast or a day in Mount Gambier, so they're extending their trip to that multi-day visit and stay. But definitely international tourism, we have seen a significant drop-off in international tourism, where they don't necessarily buy our wine from our cellar door, but they do go back with that memory of Coonawarra and take that for the rest of their lives.
Ms. Brisky.
Sure, thank you, Chair. Thanks for your contributions today. Wanted to expand a little bit more on the sustainability evidence that you've been providing. And in terms of our existing sustainability measures, how does Australian wine compare internationally?
Compares very well. We've got a reputation of internationally of a clean green image, and that's certainly been enhanced by Sustainable Wine Growing Australia, which was a national Wine Australia initiative that basically certifies growers and producers to a standard that's world recognised by buyers. So we've got an advantage that we need to continue to hold on to. Other countries probably can't. If you've got nuclear reactors or other things going, it's very hard to change the narrative about that. And that's where whatever we do has got to be well considered going forward.
And in terms of I understand there's sustainability certifications. How does achieving a certification? What difference does that make for?
If it's really, Pete Barnhouse, it's really, in the end, it's going to become a barrier to trade. So if you're not a certified certificate holder of Sustainable Wine Growing Australia, you will not be able to sell fruit domestically and therefore internationally. So that's on the edge of happening now. Most people that buy bulk wine or wine internationally will require that certification. So Australia's a long way advanced in getting that. The entire industry, regardless of state, into the right circumstance. But we need to continue to push that because it's a very consumers just want more and more information.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on Ms Strickland. During your opening statement, you mentioned some clearer national standards. Are they already written, or are you able to table them for the committee, or is it something you're able to talk to for us?
So the national... Sorry, I missed a bit of that. My apologies.
National standards. I wrote that down. Clearer national standards for wine producers. So just keen to understand whether that's something that you've produced, or that you know, is in train, or something that we could look into further.
I think it fits in with what Peter was saying in terms of certification, and that is required, or it's not required at the moment, but increasingly will. And one of the probably the barriers to getting that across the board is the amount of work and money required to make that happen. But certainly having something like that is important into the future, and increasingly, as you said, will be a barrier if you don't have it.
I just wanted to quickly unpack in your submission. It noted that some small and medium wine producers are experiencing sort of that growth disconnect between national trade and export support frameworks. And I think you in particular mentioned cost, complexity and risk around some of those very keen, some of those very critical things around export markets. So I'm just keen to understand, like, what does that look like from the point of the realities of operating a regional business, and what that looks like. I think the previous panel told us a little bit about regional airports and planning and things like that. Is that also true for the wine producers in this region? But also, what are the additional supports that you might think about, or opportunities that the committee could consider?
So Helen Strickland, I can start on this, but these two guys can probably add more context into that. My understanding is that we're a long way from anywhere. That's the start. And so if you want to export, then the costs involved in actually setting up that supply chain and getting into that market are quite considerable. And then your return on that investment in terms of personnel, but in terms of dollars as well, is not insignificant, and will take you some years to get back. So that's the risk factor in that. And one of the things that I noted when we were talking yesterday was that idea of not just us going somewhere for a trade fair or whatever, but why don't we bring the buyers back in here, and why don't we support that so that they can come into the regions and meet us on our own ground. And that would be a really good practical way to do something, that you actually had trade people coming into the region. But you might have more to add on that.
Yeah, Luke Togashu, owner of Patrick of Coonawarra. We really acknowledge the help that Austrade and Wine Australia do give us. Also the Department of State Development in South Australia. We hosted a group of 12 international Chinese buyers recently, came down to Coonawarra, spent the night, had a tomahawk steak from Mayura Station at our cellar door, and just went away being absolute ambassadors for Coonawarra and the region. So certainly support in bringing people to region, not only international buyers, domestic buyers, and then flow through right through to influencing the consumers to come and just visit a region. That would be a lot of assistance is needed in that area, and barriers like transport is one hurdle to get to region.
Sorry, I might have missed it, but who supported that program? Was it South Australian government or the or Austrade, the federal government?
South Australia Department of State Development.
Great, that's it from me. Thanks, Chair.
Steve?
I might ask you the same question I asked the previous group, and that was the issues with shortages of work skills, or finding, filling positions, etc. Could you give us a bit of an overview of the wine industry and where the shortages of skills are in the region? And is the industry struggling, or are you doing okay compared to other industries when it comes to finding labour.
Pete Barnoves. I think in most of the discussions we have across multiple industries, and the wine industry is no different, there's a capacity loss through lack of employees, be that in administration, be that cleaning, be it tractor drivers, winery staff. So there's a real lack of availability of being able to get the right people. In fact, sometimes any people to come in and do jobs. So there's I think a few businesses that we deal with would all say the same thing, because we discuss it a lot about how how this is going to be dealt with. There's not a clear way out of that, and I suspect that the people that this would be my thoughts alone. I suspect that the people that we've lost that would have normally filled those roles have probably gone into the NDIS as carers or assistants to that program, because populations are increasing in regional areas, but there's just a layer of people. Admittedly, businesses have become more complex, so the need to have more staff is warranted, but it's like there's a generation missing. So I can't. I hope that the solution in some ways in what we do in agriculture is in automation, but the tricky thing there is that rather than having 3 people, you need 1 person that is extremely skilled in dealing with electronics and technology. So the cost is probably not going to be any different, but maybe that might be a way of us dealing with the future. Thank you.
Helen Strickland. To add on to that, I think because the wine industry has for some time had a casualised workforce, where you have peak times that you need a lot of people and other times that you don't. It's not necessarily seen as an attractive industry to go into, and then I think we need to do some work in terms of making it a desirable industry to go into, not just in terms of the jobs in the vineyard or the jobs in the winery that are not high skill level, but also in terms of saying there's a pathway here, rather than you're stuck in that job forever. And to be honest, there are a lot of people who actually love that, and they enjoy that. They enjoy working and doing what they're doing. But I believe that young people increasingly are going, where's this going? What's that going to lead to for me? And therefore, why should I commit to it? And I think we are trying to be employers of choice in a market that's contestable, and so that makes it difficult for us in terms of getting the right people to do the right work.
You mentioned the seasonal nature of the work. Do you access any of the federal schemes, such as the Pacific Island Labour Mobility Scheme, the PALM scheme, or I suspect probably more likely backpackers, the backpackers, particularly those who are trying to get their 88 days regional and get their second-year visa? Is that a solution for you? Or?
Yeah, Luke Tokishu, Patrick of Coonawarra. Yeah, certainly the backpacker is the ideal scenario for our seasonal work, where you're busy from February to April, May, so that sort of that short window, and we see a lot of backpackers come through. For a lot of the labour force in the region, we are reliant on migrant workers for that, which there is a good supply. Housing, again, as I spoke about previously, is always a challenge, but the more we move away from the labour and the hand work that needs to be done and more into automation and machinery, it is in balance in that end, but certainly getting skilled labour is a challenge.
I think, Barno, sorry if I could just add to that briefly. One barrier we have got is also the definition of skilled labour. So, a tractor driver, machinery operator is not seen as a skilled that's allowed to come in under some visas, and that poses some difficulties because there's a lot of people out there in other countries that are willing to come, but they can't come in under that visa system. So it's that definition perhaps should be looked at to be relaxed to some degree in the future.
Well, there is a solution to that, and Charlotte, the Limestone Coast group might look at a defined area migration scheme, which we've got in parts of WA, whereby farm workers, tractor drivers, etc., are deemed to be in short supply in that particular region, and they can then come in under the skilled migration program. Is there any final questions from the panel?
One final question. In terms of a lot of talk about the EU trade agreement that's been signed recently, and that'll be coming into fruition over the next sort of short period. Is there any positioning by the wine industry? Obviously, we're hearing there'll be enormous opportunities. I'd like to just get your views on whether they're positive or negative.
Pete, call that ball. I think there's. Let's hope that is. There are some big opportunities there. It's a little bit unknown as to how that's all going to play out. So it's a positive, seen as a positive, but how it actually plays out will take a bit of time to work through. So yeah, it's been a good initiative.
But is there any work being done collaboratively with the industry, with anyone else, to see where the markets are?
Wine Australia would be dealing with that. We don't deal with those sorts of things at a regional level, but Wine Australia, I'm pretty sure, would be dealing with those sorts of market development, Austrade type issues.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any final comments or observations that you would like to get on the record before we wrap up?
Thank you for your time.
Okay, and just before we do wrap up, I'll acknowledge the member for Barker has joined the room. Welcome, Mr. Passon. And now I'll just have to find the closing statement. That one. Okay, thank you for your attendance here today. If you have been asked to provide any additional information, would you please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of July 2026. Please be aware that any questions on notice will be published on the committee's website. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence and will have the opportunity to request corrections to transcription areas. Thank you very much. So we will now suspend the meeting until 12:45. 12:45 p.m. I will resume the hearing of the Joint Standing Committee on Trade and Investment Growth here in Mount Gambier, and I call upon representatives of the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association and Graham Hamilton from Hamilton's Run to give evidence. For the Hansard record, would you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Andrew Curtis, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association.
Graham Hamilton, I'm a member of the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association. I do manage water politics for the association in the local region, and we have a farm which is called Hamilton's Run.
Thank you. And by way of introduction, my name is Rick Wilson. I'm the Deputy Chair, filling in for the Chair who's indisposed today. My electorate of O'Connor covers South East WA.
Senator Cox from Western Australia.
Joe Brisky, Federal Member for Maribyrnong, which is in Metro Melbourne.
Excellent.
And Steve Georgianis, Federal Member for Adelaide, and we welcome Mr Curtis to our migration hearing a few weeks ago. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise that this hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament and therefore has the same standing of proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. To assist with the transcription of the public hearing, it would be appreciated if you could please state your name before responding to each question. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we move to questions.
Andrew and I have both prepared presentations. I'm going to let Andrew go first because his is more helicopter view overall, and broad-based. Mine becomes more detailed and more specific to this region. So,
and mine's on my phone and I can't read it, so I'll read the one that Graham's printed out for me. Andrew Curtis, as stated. I'm happy to provide a copy of this opening statement after we go, if that's of help for the record. South Australian dairy is a practical example of how regional agriculture, food manufacturing, export development, provenance branding, environmental stewardship and tourism can combine to deliver sustainable economic growth. The South Australian Dairy Farmers Association supports a stronger national approach to promoting Australia's clean and green agriculture, food and drink sector. However, this reputation must be supported by verifiable systems including traceability, credible certification, animal welfare, sustainable measures, food safety and clear regional provenance. The South Australian Dairy Industry Action Plan and SADA's Plan to Farm set out a growth pathway based on sustainability and climate resilience, market growth and premium branding, workforce development, including immigration considerations, technology and innovation and regulatory reform. The industry's practical ambition is to grow towards 700 million litres while strengthening premium dairy, regional processing, tourism links and export readiness. We see that there's a number of key areas that we need to consider in this. Clean, green and trusted, supporting premium regional branding, supporting digital traceability, and SADA has been fortunate to work with the Department of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries in developing a traceability program. Plan to Farm, in which we calling on recognising agriculture as a strategic land use in planning, water and environment policy, so that dairy regions can keep producing and investing with confidence and without threat of unintended consequences of other planning decisions. Supporting sustainability infrastructure, supporting effluent management, nutrient recycling, water efficiency, renewable energy, methane reduction and circular economy initiatives that improve environmental and market outcomes, and supporting regional capability, investing in skills, workforce pathways, export readiness and cross-agency growth partnerships to support farms, processors and regional small to medium-sized enterprises. I think that, yeah, from that, a key, and Graham will probably follow on this, we need to look at how we develop the region and support the region in consideration of how we move from local to regional to state and national, building the capabilities within the region to support that region and allow it to participate in often an international market by considering the breadth of issues, not just one, be that branding or employment. Thank you.
Mr Hamilton.
Yes, Graham Hamilton. In this presentation, I wish to illuminate the limitation of branding for agriculture in small regions where marketing direct to the community is limited because of small population pools. In this region, we supply consistent raw materials for South Australian statewide brands. The natural resources of the lower South East have made it very successful at agriculture region, and its historical list of produce is very long. It includes wheat, oats, barley, flax, dairy, beef, wool, lambs, potatoes, onions, peas, beans, carrots, rhubarb, cabbages, corn, herbs, apples, pears, walnuts, cherries, tobacco, timber, and the list goes on and on. We can produce many, many things here. A number of these were very small scale to supply the local market, but most were freighted further afield. We've always been an export region, and during the 1960s it was said that Mount Gambier had more trucks per capita than any other town in Australia. Some might argue we should increase the local consuming population manyfold, but I would contest that allowing a large urban and rural living footprint here would remove too much of our productive land. It is either one or the other, not both, in my view. A major challenge for us is the growth of rural living and urban expansion, alienating the best land from agriculture use. Lifestyles are paying more for land than its current agriculture earning income capacity, and the land becomes vastly underutilised in that model. Agriculture needs to increase its earning ability per hectare to retain Australia's most productive food sources. We live on and use an underground water aquifer, and it is not possible to pump that water more distant. It's lodged with the geology we live on. Most southeast produce is freighted to distant processors, except for timber, which is freight cost sensitive in log form. Milk, grapes, potatoes take minimum 4-hour truck journeys to reach efficient processing sites. Watertown, Naracoorte and Warrnambool, that's 2 hours drive in Victoria, each have processing capacity for some forms of red meat, but a large percentage travels much further afield. Mondelez produces Philadelphia cream cheese in Mount Gambier, and UDC has a powder plant for milk south of Penola for local and export consumption, but their volume requirement is relatively small. Most businesses manufacturing for the local consumption operate with scale ceilings. Their businesses models only make sense by remaining small and nimble, providing superior customer service. As soon as their product saturates the local market, further expansion must be a giant financial commitment, and it's a risk most avoid. In this region, a grower has no bargaining power unless they guarantee to regularly fill B-double trucks. Small consigners generally sell without a premium, as they have no negotiating power. The premium is the difference between subsistence and profitable economic performance, in my view. When produce reaches the distant processing site, it cannot be distinguished from similar produce sourced from the rest of the catchment area, and all are blended together. At this point, we must realise that state-based branding is the logistical and financial reality. South Australia's total annual milk production is nudging 500 million litres, or about 1.3 million litres per day. In contrast, the Darfield plant in New Zealand can consume over 7 million litres every day, producing export powder extremely low unit cost. Any concept of developing competitive export products from regions like ours has not considered the necessary production scale, the enormous time and cost of developing such products, gaining market desire for the product, creating space for them in a fiercely competitive marketplace, and working with the importer's own volatile domestic demands. The well-known international food brands have mostly been developed over decades and have reached international exposure through surplus domestic production, coupled with chance export opportunities, or government subsidised exports. Australia is in none of those positions. Building a new high-value regional export brands from zero will be prohibitively expensive, and success will depend on rare opportunities with foreign importers. To foster regional economies, improve farmer incomes, farmers must adopt new farming technologies and investment. I believe focus should be on state and very large regional-based branding instead of very localised branding. Stop the unsuccessful grant system Australia uses to foster growth and development. This system engenders dependence on government handouts. The applications are too time-consuming to complete. The criteria is generally too narrow. The amount of money and the allowable timelines are never enough to get projects over the line. I believe we should begin a new system of no-interest loans, where government pays the interest for an agreed period. Lending institutions should continue to be the primary lender and interest paid directly to them. Proponents of projects should justify investment proposals to lenders, and government use the same information to assess them. I believe that high-tech precision farming is the best way to increase output, earnings and efficiency, to engage the minds of successive generations of farm owners, while improving stewardship of natural resources and animals. New technologies are the centrepiece, and everything attached to them usually needs updating to extract the full potential from the new systems. Farm businesses must be robust enough to experiment and make occasional mistakes without it bringing down the whole business. Farms of the future need scale, and farmers must be professional business owners, managers. Farming generally does not need local branding and would be better off without the grant system, but new ways must be found to navigate around lenders which have become too risk-averse. The adoption of new technological systems has slowed to snail's pace. National, state and larger regions must have strong brands to identify Australian products when competing with imported products. But very localised branding will confuse the issue when we consider the way raw materials are gathered for efficient processing and then redistributed to capital cities and regions. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. As a farmer myself, I'm kind of listening to you, and the world doesn't owe the dairy industry a living. I mean, you've got to compete for acres against, I assume, in this part of the world, beef cattle, lambs, forestry. But so in the current pricing, how far away is your average dairy farmer from saying, oh, it's given the work and the capital intensivity of dairy farming, I'll just go to running beef cattle or something similar?
Many of them, it's a complex set of questions that they ask themselves, often to do with their ages and abilities and aspirations for the families or successors, whatever they are, whoever they are. It comes quite close at times. It comes quite close.
But having said that, obviously, southeast South Australia is a premium dairy producing area, and the numbers that you talked to, from WA, as Senator Cox, and our dairy industry's kind of down to the last 120 producers or something. So, and a lot of our milk comes from South Australia. So, there's obviously something about the industry over here that's keeping its head above water and paying the bills. So,
I think Andrew wants to comment, but one of the things I I keep referring to in my mind is that our production since deregulation has slipped from nearly 11 billion litres a year to something like 8.5 billion litres nationally. And if the industry was doing well, that number should never have declined like that. While New Zealand started from the same base, 11 billion odd litres, and doubled. We haven't got the settings right here.
And so, who are the major markets for South Australian dairy industry? Who are your major buyers?
Comment?
Well, I think the key, to build on Graham's comment, the key is we need to look at regional and even state-based as the branding unit rather than just local. A lot of our milk, a bit like parts of Western Australia but closer, a lot of the southeast has the ability to supply out of season, so some of our milk will go into the Melbourne market at certain times and occasionally into Sydney, but for the most part it goes to Adelaide as liquid milk, or it is processed, as Graham mentioned, at Penola or around Warrnambool in Western Victoria. For commodities, for the most part, powder and cheese, South Australia consumes about 250 million litres of liquid milk, so half of our production goes into liquid milk. Most of our population is based in and around Adelaide, so that's the major consumption of liquid milk. Having said that, we do have some significant state brands that have built and probably offer a model for how we see branding and enterprise development being supported that can enable any region to be able to build the capability to compete at a national and international level. One, Steve, that I know that you're aware of is La Casa del Formaggio. They are a Adelaide-based Italian cheese manufacturer. They started in the 1980s as Italian immigrants, local production in the kitchen, servicing people in the local suburbs. They now process about 50 million litres of milk annually, supply nationally, off the basis that they developed the brand, they developed the quantity, but were able to expand into national and now international markets because they were able to develop that. And I think that's a model that can work in a lot of regions, being able to start and being supported to start with the view that the target is building the capability to meet bigger populations and bigger demands. We have a number of others. Fluria Milk, the yogurt shop, is one that gets a fair bit of coverage and slightly hamstrung, hopefully not now, but in recent times with the conflict in the Middle East, because they have developed quite a market in the Middle East for their style of yogurt. So we have a lot of South Australian milk going into yogurt and then flying often to the Middle East to attract a premium market. Again, being able to develop something local with the view, with the right scale, but with the view for it to compete in international markets at the premium end.
So in terms of developing international markets, obviously whole milk is bulky to transport. It's not ideal, particularly for air freight, and it's not it doesn't last long enough to put in a container. But cheese obviously is something that is much more.
Look, there are a number. So the South Australian Dairy Farmers does have its own white milk brand. And pre-COVID, we were selling liquid milk into our province of China. We were selling it on the shop shelf. It was about $12.50 a litre. So yes, it cost a lot. It met a very tight premium. COVID killed it. No one went to the supermarket in China or here, and with changing arrangements, we were unable to re-enter that market afterwards. Shipping liquid milk is challenging, but there are a range of products like yogurt, like cheese, particularly specialty cheeses, and the work that UDC do, Union Dairy Company, do out of Penola, where they do a highly specified milk powder, which they've got markets for through Indonesia, and they can speak better to that than me. So again, a premium dried product that they're able to deliver into Southeast Asian markets. So yeah.
Steve, would you like to?
I might just kick off with a question that I've asked every other witness that's turned up today, and we have heard Mr. Curtis's views on another committee, but I'll re-ask the same questions, and that is the difficulties with workforce shortages and skilled workforce. Can you give us a bit of an overlay of where you're sourcing your labour from, where the shortages are, for the benefit of this committee?
I can do that.
Well, I was going to say, I've drawn on examples of people like Graham, our members, so really keen for Graham to take that.
Okay. So the problem in recent times is that we've been able to get backpackers. In fact, we jokingly say we've become the embassy for Argentina and Chile on our farm. We've got so many of them. But seriously, we have built up a reputation among the Argentine or Latino community, and word of mouth goes from one to the other, and they come. And they're fine. You know, often we've got highly educated people that are final year veterinary students and whatever else, motor mechanics, so forth. However, there's still a period of training that has to happen, and their stay is generally quite short. Many of them would want to only stay for, say, 88 days, and we say, oh, come on. You know, it's going to take 2 months for us to train you, to get you to know the routine. Can we get a guaranteed 6 months? And so that's what we do, and we filter them that way. Those that are prepared to stay longer, they're the ones we employ. But really, it's a short-term merry-go-round. We do have one skilled migrant from Philippines, and he's very good. But we want to be able to hold on to people. And it's only recently that some of these Latinos have started to say, oh, will you sponsor me? I'd like to stay 2 or 3 years, which is becoming more realistic. But it's a fickle market. If you can get onto a good stream of people, then it works. But gee, it's fickle. And we've got to, in the last 5 years, we've had to rent houses, and we've got to be guarantors for the people living in there that they won't damage it and trash it. We get them to pay us a premium, a bond, the same as you would if you were renting a house in town. So that's the way we've managed it, but it adds to our employment costs. And while the employment wage is going up every year at CPI or whatever, these other add-on costs are running away with our labour bill quite a bit. Does that answer your question?
Yep, pretty well. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. This committee has heard a lot of evidence around agritourism, and so I'm keen to understand whether you think there are any potential opportunities with connecting agritourism experiences with sort of the export market development, and particularly for dairy.
Tourism, I think possibly that might work well if you live near a regional centre like Adelaide, in the Adelaide Hills. I think you need that population base to draw on. As for international tourists, we're a long way, and you've got to dedicate somebody that's skilled to do that, and they've sort of more or less got to be on tap to be able to come at a few moments' notice. And often this sort of thing happens when you're busy doing something else. You know, you're knee-deep in something or other, and you've got to draw a person away from that task. Unless you've got scale, you're so big that they can do it, you know, for 38 hours a week or whatever it is, and then it works. But at small scales, it becomes rather a big inconvenience and a lot of effort for not much gain.
And just one clarifying point, I think you talked a little bit about stopping grants and making them no interest loans.
Yeah.
Are you essentially talking, and just to clarify your point, about sort of agri-bonds or something similar that they do internationally?
It's a fairly open concept.
Right.
What I do think is that the grants system doesn't work, and there's a lot of work in preparing your submission for the grant. There's not much security that it's actually going to be suitable, and the terms are usually quite narrow, and you've got to be in that exact position to be able to qualify. If I might take a bit of time to highlight one area that I think we could go down to improve our stewardship and efficiencies, and that would be on-farm methane production. We can use the waste from the animals to produce fertiliser and to produce base load electricity. If you understand, a methane digester is like a snowball, it keeps rolling. You can't turn it on and off like a diesel motor or a car, it has to keep running. So when you fill it with its raw materials, it's going to take some 3 weeks or more, I believe, to run down if you didn't put any more in it. But you've got to be there adjusting it every day. So if you consider the in-feed tariffs that we'd be able to get at the moment, it doesn't make sense. We can't justify the investment to do it for our farm. We're $2 million to put in such a unit, and but we could do it. We could improve our efficiency, and the time lag between installation and when you get the fruit from not having bought your fertilisers from the merchandise places, and you're starting to get your soils going better with the digestate and things like that, is so long that we can't afford that time lag, and we can't afford the investment because of the in-feed tariffs are not great enough to justify the expense. But that's one area where I believe we should be going.
And just on that, sort of, I know we're short on time. I can feel the chair about to move the call. But your commentary around new farming technologies, that I'm happy for you to provide that on notice to us if there's some more thought that you think needs to go into that, but what that might look like in relation to feasibility study or something that that looks at some of those newer technologies for farming techniques.
Some of it doesn't have to be proven. Some of it can be imported directly from overseas, and one of those is using drones for spraying pastures and applying fertiliser. Instead of waiting for the contractor to come and getting the weather right, you can be out there at 6 o'clock in the morning with your drone, and you can be running up and down the paddocks when the wind and the conditions are right, if that's what it takes. And you can apply fertiliser as well. It's not just about agriculture chemicals, it's many things. These are all areas that engage young people because they're used to technology, they want to do this sort of thing. You've got to train them not to run the drone into the centre pivot or the trees. That's a bit of a drawback, but this growing and building technology is what engages young people. And this is where we need to be going. It's not just about fixing or rectifying anything that's at the moment. It's looking to the future and getting the future growth. Branding's part of that, but there's also investment and gaining technology.
Okay, I'm going to have to go to Ms. Briskley now.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to jump back to international markets and the opportunities that might be there. You've sort of talked and reflected on COVID affecting some of the markets. Are you seeing emerging opportunities at the moment, or where might they be, especially, and also what's the marketing or promotional activity that we need to be doing to lift the demand for regional?
Absolutely, and look, recognising that there is the cloud of the last 6 months.
Sure, of course.
And from our understanding, that has had significant impact in Southeast Asia. Excluding that, there are there are certainly opportunities, and Indonesia is a key one. We have done some studies looking at as the South Australian Dairy Farmers Association, looking at opportunities in Indonesia, as has the Dairy Australia at a national level. There are barriers to entry to the market. However, there is a mandate by the President to supply milk to all school students, which is a nutrition desire on his behalf. But you know, when you're trying to give milk to 300 million people or what have you, that's a big drawdown. There are a number of those opportunities. I'd say our challenge is to again offer not at the commodity level, but at the premium level here, because as we grow nutrition, everything, and education, we grow the middle class, or Indonesia grows its middle class, and they're more interested in the premium. So big opportunities through there, through Vietnam, into Thailand, for those premium products like the ones I mentioned earlier. Yeah. And they do one or two in Melbourne as well, but in Victoria. But yeah, the big opportunities.
And is there a role for Commonwealth to support that for regional and remote businesses as well?
Yes, there is, but the challenge is to have it all joined up.
Sure.
You know, to have it so it's not just about, and it's the same as the agritourism question. It's not just about the agritourism or everything. It's about as a Commonwealth having that helicopter view, to use one of your lines. That's as well. This is the enablers to allow this region and this brand to develop. You know, yeah. So. Yeah, there's all sorts of nice words like nurturing and what have you, but it's about not having blinkers in terms of what a grant program or a development program or whatever it is, but having that ability to support a regional economy to meet those opportunities, because there are demands, and certainly through Southeast Asia there are significant growth demands. And to go back to one of Graham's earlier points, and so our challenge is to ensure that we're getting the best from our production here, and we're producing it in such a way that we can get those premium opportunities elsewhere, and we don't end up sticking houses on all our most productive land.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you for your attendance today. If you have been asked to provide any additional information, I think Senator Cox did request a little bit more information. Could you please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of July 2026? Please be aware that any questions on notice will be published on the committee's website. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence, and will have an opportunity to request corrections to the transcription, any transcription errors. I thank everyone today for their attendance. Before I do adjourn, thanks to Hansard for being here, or the recording it for us, and thanks to the Secretariat for the work that they did in putting everything together. Thank you.